Hey guys, it's Candace here. Happy Friday. Today we're going to talk about a couple of things. We're going to talk about portrait lighting. Somebody in our mentoring group had asked about portrait lighting, and then there was a question a couple weeks ago regarding histograms. So I'm going to talk about that today, and I'm going to like always, find this video inside of the photography page. I'm going to share it to my mentoring group so I can kill two birds with one stone right now and not have to do these lives twice. So while I am pulling that up, I want to let you guys know that I'll be talking about these things today, but also there is going to be a link. You can actually see it in the description for something special that I have been working on for quite a long time, and I'm really excited to talk to you guys about it today. So let me just find this video inside the photography group. We're going to share it as soon as it pops up. Sometimes there's a little bit of a lag, so it does take me a minute, and I'm just going to sit here and talk to you guys until this starts working. And you guys can pop in and say hello. So we're going to talk about a couple things before we even get into portraits. Oh, here we go. Here it is. Here's my video. We're going to share it right now. And I hope you guys are having an awesome week. I know this has been like a little bit of a tough time for everybody. It's not been a little bit of a tough time. It's been a tough time. So I'm going to share this really quick in my group. Awesome. Sharing. Boom. Okay, there it is. So like I said, leave a comment if you guys have any questions. This is still pretty much an open forum. So I want to first of all say, a lot of you know that these lives are typically scheduled for Mondays at noon and Thursdays at 4. It is not Thursday. It's also not Monday. It is Friday at 1:44 p.m. And I'll be honest, I kind of beat myself up a little bit for not being able to do the lives on Monday and Thursday. Because I'm the kind of person, I typically have a schedule, and when people are counting on me, I want to make sure that I do things during that time. But I will say that I've had to give myself a little bit of grace over these last few days. I know that everybody is going through a really tough time right now trying to get acclimated to having to be at home, having kids at home that you're having to teach. Also, you know, struggling in your businesses. You know, some people are worried about layoffs. I mean, there's just lots of different things that are going through everybody's brains. So I'm going to be completely transparent with you about this week. First of all, I'm sorry that I wasn't able to come live on Monday and Thursday. But while I definitely like get on here and talk about like schedules and being regimented and, you know, having things like neat and organized for my children while we're at home, I'm not going to lie. Like sometimes those things don't happen the way that I would like for them to happen. And this week was a particular struggle for us just because, my children, I have 3 that are here with me. And one is in college up in Virginia, and the 3 that are here, I have now had to become teacher. So I'm making sure that they stay caught up on their studies, and I will be honest, like this week was incredibly difficult. The workload was insane, and we're heading into spring break week, and I wanted to make sure that they were able to enjoy their spring break. So teacher and mom had to come first this week. So but I wanted to make sure that I came live at least to talk about the things that I had said that we were going to talk about. So I'm sorry that I wasn't able to be here on Monday and Thursday. So hopefully you guys will give me a little bit of grace too. But I'm excited to be able to be here today because I did want to talk about number 1, portrait lighting. We had a very specific question in the mentoring group about portrait lighting. So I wanted to talk about that. I am going to screen share with you guys today and bring you into Lightroom and show you what I do with histograms, because that was another question that somebody had asked, was regarding histograms. And actually, when we pop into Lightroom, I'm going to show you definitely my most popular session by far, which is the session of Hayes and Holly. So that was the last thing that I had edited up here, so it's still up in my Lightroom, so I'm going to turn this around and show it to you. But then the other thing that I and kind of doing like a little pre-launch for is my portrait lighting guide. So I've been working on this for a really long time, y'all. Quite honestly, it's probably been about a decade in the making, because it really encompasses all of my portrait experience over the last 10 years photographing families and weddings. And there's actually a link here in the description if you guys want to click on it and take a peek. But I'm doing a pre-launch of this, and I haven't put it out into the interwebs yet. This is specifically just for people on my Facebook Lives or in my mentoring group or in my on my email list. So if you click on the link, it'll take you to all the information about the perfect portrait guide for outdoor portraits. So I give you all of my tips and tricks on photographing outside in harsh lighting. And there are 8 different scenarios that I go through. And I even give you a checklist of everything that you need to make sure that you have gorgeous portraits regardless of the lighting. So that is something that you can click on and take a look at. And I hope you guys enjoy that. So first of all, I wanted to talk about the first question that we had regarding portrait lighting and exactly where to position your subjects. So I will tell you, when it comes to portrait lighting, outdoors, any time of day, the first thing that I am going to look for, obviously, is some type of open shade. So open shade meaning it could be tree cover, it could be shade from a building, doesn't matter. I'm going to look for some type of shade that's available. So I will say that's not always the case. You're not always going to be able to find a shady spot. So if I am finding a shady spot, then I'm going to make sure that I am going to position my couple where the sun is going to be setting behind them. And typically at a 45-degree angle is what I like, because when you get the sun completely behind them, that's when you end up with sun flare. That's when you end up with crazy blown out backgrounds. So with the sun behind them, you want the sun to be at a 45-degree angle, but not to the point where it's blaring right into your lens. So that is the typical rule of thumb that I use when I am photographing anybody, whether it's a wedding or a family session. Sun behind them, 45-degree angle. I try to look for that. I try to look for that open shade. If I can't find open shade, sometimes you just have to go with it. There have definitely been times where I've been photographing a wedding and it is in the middle of the day and the sun is high in the sky, but there is no shade. It might be at like a winery or somewhere where there's just not any trees available. And when that happens, I will try to find some type of reflector, some type of natural reflector. If there's, you know, a gravel walkway, or if there is a concrete walkway, or something that is white that can reflect light back onto my subjects, so we don't, again, get crazy blown out backgrounds and tons of sun flare. Those are things I'm going to be looking for. So if I can find open shade, I'm still going to try to put that sun at a 45-degree angle behind them. If I have to shoot more in full sun, I'm still going to do the same. I'm going to try to put the sun behind them at a 45-degree angle. And yeah, I mean, that is the typical rule of thumb when I am photographing any kind of portrait. Now, I will tell you, when it comes to shade, you don't want to place your subjects in the deep, deep shade, because then that's going to make your images look kind of dark and muddy and kind of give it a blue look to it. So you want to pull your subjects out so they are towards the edge of the shade. So that's what's going to make your photos brighter, and you're not going to have that deep contrast between your subjects and whatever the lighting scenario is around them. So sun behind you, 45-degree angle. If you can find shade, pull them to the edge of the shade. If you have to photograph in full sun, same principle, sun behind them at a 45-degree angle. And then sometimes you just got to go with the full sun on your subject. I've had to do that so many times, and sometimes those images are just as beautiful as the ones where you've got, you know, open shade and you've got the sun behind your subject. So, but if you use those rules of thumb, it's going to be super helpful. Every single lighting scenario I go over in my Perfect Portrait lighting guide. Like I said, the link is below if you want to take a peek. And I go through every single scenario, sun flare, backlit, finding open shade, full sun, finding natural reflectors, using diffusers, using man-made reflectors. All that I go through in there, so you guys have a really great idea of what tools you need every time that you are photographing in the sun. That way you approach a session or you approach a wedding day feeling totally confident, like you can absolutely photograph anything that you walk into. So I hope that was helpful regarding where to place your subjects. The next question I had was regarding histograms. So I'm going to screen share here in a second. But I will tell you, when it comes to histograms, there's a couple different ways that you can use them. You can use them in camera, so you can actually see, you know, where your highlights are, where your shadows are as you're photographing, and then you can use them when you're editing. So I will tell you, for me in particular, when it comes to histograms, I don't use them when I'm shooting. I pay attention to my metering in my camera, and then obviously I'm taking test shots too to see kind of where I am with my metering in my camera. I don't think I've ever used my histogram. Maybe I've turned it on like once or twice just to see what it does, but in camera, I'm not going to use it. But I do use it inside of Lightroom to actually get proper white balance. That is the major thing that I use it for. You can definitely use it too for lots of different things, for highlights, shadows, for getting proper exposure with your images. For me, the number one thing is going to be white balance. So I am going to share my screen with you here in just a second. I'm actually pulling up this session. So there's a couple things that I want to show you with this. Let me screen share with you. All right, here we go. I am showing you my session from Hayes and Holly. We did lots of stuff. They were running around and acting crazy. But here, you know, actually, I'm going to show you some lighting scenarios, and then I'm going to show you how I used my histogram. So I'm going to pull this up in the develop module so you can see the lighting for this. So with this one in particular, this was actually probably a little bit more sun flare than I would typically like in my image, but I don't know. This is my son, and I don't know. I just love the way that the light was coming through here. But you'll see with this particular image, he was standing with his back to the sun, and it was off at a 45-degree angle. So so this is just kind of showing you like my general rule of thumb when it comes to these types of images when I'm figuring out what kind of lighting I want. So this was actually quite a few things that were going for us with this particular image. Was we had a neutral colored walkway that acted as a natural reflector. We did have open shade, which is really nice because you can see the trees behind him, but the sun was peeking through, so I still had him stand at a 45-degree angle to the sun with it behind him. So just so you can kind of get a visual. There's another image, same thing with little Holly here. She's twirling. I put her in the same spot, 45-degree angle, sun coming through, exact same scenario. There was another one I wanted to show you guys, which was a little bit of a different scenario. Let me scroll through here. You probably see me scrolling. I'm scrolling fast. I want to find it. So here they are walking down this walkway. And I love this walkway because same scenario. This is like the magical unicorn of walkways. This is a Great Marsh in Bealton, Virginia, if anybody's wondering where this is. It's just incredible. One of my favorite venues. But you can even see here the way that the sun is coming this way. We've got 45-degree angle on the sun here. So the sun is, you know, a little off to the side, but still in front of them, but necessarily behind them as I'm photographing. So we still have that 45-degree angle. We have a natural reflector here on the roadway. So yeah, so you get all of that here. with this particular scenario. So let me just show you how I use, how I'm going to use my histogram here. Let me just find an image. That would be a good example. Well, it's black and white, so that's not going to be a good example. But here I'm going to show you how I use my histogram. So if you look up here with the histogram, you've got all this gray, and then you have these colors here on the side. You can barely see them. There is a little bit of blue, a little bit of the cyan. You can see a little bit of magenta. But for the most part, all you're going to see here on the edge is gray, and that is on purpose. When I'm adjusting my white balance in my images, the closer that I can get this to being a gray line, the closer this is going to be to proper white balance. So let me see if I can give you an example here of something like straight out of camera. Let's see. This is probably, that one's not a good example. Let's see. We're just scrolling through. Oh my gosh, they're so cute. So when this one came straight out of camera, let's see how this looked. Yeah, guys, I'm going to show it to you just raw and untouched. So, okay, here we go. So that's straight out of camera. And you can see with this image, like there's a little bit of the cyan here on the edge. I'm going to try to get rid of that, and I want to make this as perfect as possible with white balance. So once I've applied all of my presets and done all of that, you can see actually this was a little bit warm. But if you look here on the edge, I mean, we're pretty close to gray. We're pretty darn close to gray to give it that perfect white balance. Let's find another one. Maybe it's a little bit of a better example. Actually, this one, we'll go back to this one. And sometimes you just have to eyeball it, but when this comes straight out of camera, sometimes the white balance is like super wackadoodle. So you see here, there was a lot of yellow when it came straight out of camera. But then once all the editing was done, we pulled it back. So we have a little bit of red, but I found that when I'm trying to get rid of that, it does make the image a little bit green. So it wasn't my favorite. So if I went totally by the histogram, this is what I would get. And that's really not my favorite as far as temperature wise. I liked it a little bit warmer because the sun was coming through. But you can see that we were able to get rid of a lot of that yellow here on this side of the histogram. Also, I mean, you can use the histogram too when it comes to, you know, finding your right exposure. I like my images to be pretty light and bright, so sometimes my exposure is going to be a little bit more over here to the right. Hey, Francie, what's up, girl? So I am going to be a little bit brighter, but typically when it comes to exposure, you want this to be pretty even here in the middle. So let me see if I can find one more example. Let's see how this one came out from import. Yeah, you can see here there was a lot of yellow here and there was some green, and then once the edits were done, you got a little bit less. I don't know, these are, sorry guys, like I feel like these should be like way better examples for you. Let me pull this out a little bit so you can see. Actually, now you can see it a little bit better. So when I pull this out, I pull the exposure down just so you can see this edge of the histogram. But you can see here on the edge, the only thing that we have here is just a little bit of red. So it's mostly going to be gray. So that's really what you want to go for, is on the right side of your histogram, getting it as close to gray as possible. So yeah, that was a lot easier to see once I pulled that exposure down. But that's what's going to give you the closest to perfect white balance, is using that. Sometimes it doesn't always work, particularly when you have a lot of sun coming into your image. When you're you know, a little bit closer to golden hour, sometimes it's going to be a little bit more on the yellow side, just because you know, at sunset you're going to have more of that golden tone. But this has been the #1 thing that I use to set the correct white balance over the last few years, and it really has been pretty awesome. So that is my experience with histograms, and that is what I use them for, and it serves me pretty well. So hopefully that was a helpful tip for you guys, and I hope that you really enjoy the rest of your week and the rest of your weekend. I'm going to hang out for one quick second just to see if anybody has any questions, because again, like this, we do have a lag with these Facebook Lives, so I'll probably be talking a full like 5 to 10 seconds before you guys actually hear it. But make sure you guys click on that link, take a peek at the portrait guide. I hope it's useful for you guys, and thank you so much for showing up and hanging out with me for a little bit, and I'm really excited to see you guys next week. Have a lovely, wonderful, wonderful weekend and a productive week ahead, and I will see you on Monday. See you guys. Bye.